We're going live in a couple minutes here with Nick Pavlidis. I'm so good at butchering last names. Nick's gonna be like, what? That's not how you say it. He'll get there. But he is he's been dead at the scene of a car accident to a very successful corporate executive in New York City to, being miserable at that to becoming one of the most successful entrepreneurs you probably never met or even heard of because he loves rocking in the background. We're going to be joined here with him momentarily, and I will see you in about 90 seconds. Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast and YouTube channel. I'm on a mission to help you cut the time to all the things that are holding you back so you can unleash your entrepreneur. Hey, welcome to Never Been Promoted. Hi, I'm your host, Thomas Helfrich. We are going to be talking about some cool stuff with entrepreneurship here, but really just an inspirational story of overcoming and recognizing parts of your journey. Nick's going to talk, Nick Pavlidis. I hope I'm saying that. I forgot to ask him specifically how to say it, so I'm just making shit up at this point. It's okay, because that's what I do, and then people can hold me accountable off camera or on later. It's fun. If you've never been here before or listened or anything like that, thanks for joining for the first time. If you've been here before, you know our mission is to help entrepreneurs get better at entrepreneurship. You got to cut the tide, all that stuff holding you back, and unleash that entrepreneur within you. You get out there. Now, before we get going, I have one call to action. Please take a moment. If you like this channel, go to youtube.com/@neverbeenpromoted and subscribe. And if you listen to the podcast, reviews matter tons to get our mission out there, to get the stories from our guests. So if you can do the 5-star review, it'd be great. But now, enough shameless plugs. Let's get Mr. Nick up onto the stage here. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? So with the name pronunciation, it was close, but so now I'm going to be on a mission to pronounce your name differently every time I say it for the rest of our time together.
This is typically how my roll works. But you notice that my name does have different pronunciation. It's yours Pavlidis?
Pavlidis.
Pavlidis. Sounds
pretty close. I mean, you were there.
Pavlidis. I do this because I have to say your name multiple times, which gives you marketing credit. Do you see how I did that?
Yes.
And people are like, well, how do you say it? And they read it. And they're like, I don't think he's saying it right. I think it's Pavlidis. And they say it to themselves. Now they're thinking, that's Nick Pavlidis.
That's right.
That's a trick. Guys, you can take that little nugget and take it away. My last name, how do you think it's pronounced? Because I don't know. Actually, I do know, but
I would say Helfrich, but there could be a Helfrich at the end, of course. Yeah.
That's the two predominant American ways to do it. It's Helfrich or Helfrich.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like maybe Central Europe, Slavic, they say Helfrich. And if you're German, it actually sounds good. They're like Helfrich. It's like sounds good. I can't do it because I'm not German. My German accent is annoying, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, if we were to go to Greece, that'd be Pavlidis.
It's like you have like a lift in it, Pavlidis.
Yeah, Pavlidis. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, Nick, thanks for coming on, man. You're super busy. You're aloof. You're hard to get on a show, and somehow you agreed to come on this one. So hopefully that's not regrettable by the end of this hour. So thanks for.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I can pretend to big time something. The truth is, I just love being in the background, and we have some mutual friends, and I respect you and everything that you're that you're focused on and that you're all about. So it was an easy decision to join you.
I appreciate it. And for those who don't know, there's a thing called Podfest every year, and it's Orlando, right? It's where you guys do this.
Yeah.
And it's like the biggest podcast extravaganza, podcast orgy. Is that I don't know if that's the right terminology. It's podcasters laying in different.
Maybe for some, I haven't been in those corners of the room, but
I mean, podcasting can get weird, and I think sometimes that might be how someone described it to me on your team at one point. It's like a podcast orgy, but not with orgy. And I'm like, I kind of want to go now. I'm just not for any other reason that it just an interesting way to describe a conference that I've never been to like that.
Yeah, right.
I've never rocked a conference of any type that would be described that way. You know what? Take a few moments here if you can. Set up your kind of journey story. Goes far back. I mean, I did lead with you. You've been dead, so you have to kind of go back to the point where you died.
Sure, we can start at death. That works. So there were 2 times in my life. One time I was very close to death, and I was able to. I just got lucky that I got really sick before a lot of people do when they were dealing with what I was dealing with, and that was just a couple of years ago. But I was dead at the scene of a car accident my senior year of high school. So September 11th, 1995. Yeah, I was working at an ice cream shop, and I was on my way back from bringing some sundaes to a house, and someone was on the wrong side of the road, hit me head on. I had no seatbelt. I was in a little car. And they were in a big Buick, and I bounced around the car. My chest completely pushed the steering column into the dashboard. And when I woke up, I was still in the car. They said I had been out for about 7 or 8 minutes. And when they found me, I was done. I had no blood pressure, no pulse, lost body functions. I had a seizure at the scene. Thanks to some filters you probably can't notice, but like I have maybe one of these is sort of shining through. I bounced off the windshield. I was lucky I got caught. I didn't get ejected, but my tendons were severed all the way down to my bones, and I had brain injury. And when they found me, they didn't think it was looking good. And then eventually I came through. They had me on the maximum oxygen, and they were treating me in the car. They couldn't get me. They wanted to airlift me, but it was in a thickly settled area. And so they ended up just throwing me maybe not throwing me, placing me gently into the back of an ambulance.
He's dead anyway. Toss him in the back seat.
And so they drove by like so many hospitals to go into Mass General Hospital, which was the only facility that had a trauma care level that could provide some hope. And but when I woke up, I was in and out. I woke up to them screaming that they couldn't find a pulse. They had no pulse. They had no blood pressure. And I could hear them, but I couldn't see them. And I was I thought my eyes were open, but they apparently weren't. And eventually I was just like forced myself to just utter like, wait, I have no pulse. And those were the first words I said when I came through. And they took care of me. They got me in the back of the car, and eventually I stabilized. I was in the hospital for a little bit, not too long. I think 1 or 2 nights. I don't really remember. But because of that, I actually have no childhood memories. And so like everything before my senior year of high school, I may get like a deja vu feeling, or like remember like a snapshot of an event. But my family's all from Greece, and we have gone to Greece 13 times as a kid. I don't remember a single one of those vacations.
Oh, wow.
And we were there 5-6 weeks at a time. And my family talks about all these times we did together. We spent together, all these things we did together. And it's like I'm hearing it for the first time. And so it gave me a really cool opportunity just to reassess. At the time, I was in like a heavy metal band playing drums and lead singer. And I was on the varsity soccer team of high school. And then I couldn't do any of that because my hands were torn apart. My back and neck still to this day, I'm in pain all day, every day. I'm just used to it. It's just this pain there, but it provides me this really cool perspective. Also this discomfort. I really enjoy the discomfort of my back and neck because I can't sit idle, sit still for any period of time. So I have to keep moving. But after that, I really had this assessment because from what I understand, and you'll hear that if I'm ever talking about childhood, from what I understand, because I don't remember, I'd always been like, family oriented, wanting to start a family and whatnot. So my instinct was, oh my goodness, like I was just dead. This is kind of a big deal. What if it happens again and I either don't get to have a family, or I have a family and now they're like they got no money for food. And so I went from not being a good student. I graduated somewhere in the middle of my high school class, D's, C's, etc., to actually valedictorian of my undergrad. Like I just became obsessed with success at that point. And anything I did, I was obsessed with. I worked full time in undergrad, and eventually I went to law school, valedictorian of undergrad, worked full time, just obsessed with saving up enough money so if something were to happen to me when I had a family, they'd be okay. A few years later, I discovered life insurance and then realized I had wasted like 10 years of my life obsessing over saving money when I could just spend, $1,500 a year and not have to worry about any of that.
Oh, you did it. You
Yeah, right?
now you had cash. Like, oh, cool. I got cash to spend. Now let's go invest in something.
Yeah.
And that's when I bought my first business.
Well, I've always been a little bit of an entrepreneur as a child. From what I understand, I used to go and buy like bulk candy before school and sell it piece by piece in school. And even when I started as a lawyer, I always had a side hustle. So I was an undergrad, went to Boston College for law school, ended up getting a job offer from an incredible law firm straight out of law school in New York City. They were based in DC. At the time, they had 300 lawyers. Now they have something like 700 lawyers. And the way some of us described it, was it's the cream of the crap. Like law firms are not a great place to work, but this was, of the law firms, it was the people were nice. It's just the industry was really, really challenging. When I first moved to New York, again, I was still at this point, I still hadn't learned about life insurance. I was obsessed with, my father flips burgers for a living. My mother sells them. And they have a little mom and pop shop here in Massachusetts. And everyone else who was hired, one of their fathers was like an ambassador. One of the fathers was like, my classmates rather, was the ambassador to Canada or something like that. The former governor of Massachusetts, lawyers, like they had this like pedigree. And for me, it's like, well, my dad came over on a boat and now he flips burgers, but he's a business owner. And so I didn't feel like I belonged. So I called a real estate broker. I said, get me as close as you can to this office. This is where I'm going to be working. 52nd and Broadway was the office. So she found me an apartment on the exact city block. So I didn't even have to cross a street to get to work. I was like that paranoid about getting them figuring out that I didn't belong. And so I figured I'd just outwork everybody. And so I never set boundaries. Nick, can you do this? The answer was always yes. And I ended up doing really, really well at the law firm. I was there for 10 years. I was the head of the associates committee. I was the only non-partner or not the only associate to have a corner office, and which is a status thing there. To me, it didn't really. I'm not big on titles. I'm not big on status, but it meant that they liked me, and so I had a corner office.
From Suits. You were like,
What's yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And so I'm overlooking Central Park. Everyone who would come by would think that I was somehow relevant, at least, if not important, because of that. But the truth is, when that happens, then you just get more work. And I was there for 10 years. Amazing people, still in touch with many of them to this day. And I've been gone since 2014 from there. I started there in 2004. I was a summer associate in 2003, and never lost a case, not because I was better, smarter, or anything than anyone, but because we either settled or we had a successful result in court, because I took a different approach. And that was me. Like I was always the oddball. The criticism that I used to get was, we don't feel you love the law. And I can still remember them telling me that. And I'm like, why would anyone love the law? Like, you love people, you don't love the law. Like, this makes no sense to me. And they didn't mean it negatively toward people, but like I had no idea what one particular judge's inclination or political leanings was. Like, I wouldn't spend my time studying the Supreme Court. And that was negative for that environment. And so, I'd spent all those years really, really successful, but then when I'd leave the office, sometimes really, really late. I was working 80, 100 hours a week. When I'd leave the office, I never left feeling like I did good in the world. Like even when I won, in order for me to win, someone else had to lose. And I would spend my life arguing over things that didn't matter, like just ego arguments where I said, hey, I'm going on vacation. Can we have an extra 2 weeks to do this with opposing counsel? And they'd say no for no particular reason. There was like, you're arguing over things that don't matter, spending time. And for me, it was just not, it was not a comfortable environment. And so sometime around 2010, I started exploring what I could do next. In 2009, I had my first kid, and I had a commute for the first time, and which was awesome. So we moved from the same city block to Hoboken, New Jersey. So I'd have 45 minutes to a bus to 2 trains. And I started listening to podcasts, and it was really in audiobooks. It was amazing. And so I discovered some mentorship in the entrepreneurship world and realized there's this whole other world out there. And so I spent a few years gaining confidence. I joined a mastermind group in 2014, would go to conferences and started networking, started blogging a little bit, and really tried to feel my way around. And eventually my wife had enough of New York City. And by eventually, I mean like 2 days after we moved out there, but eventually it boiled over a little bit. And in 2013, I had a choice to make, and I either needed to choose my family or choose my career and make a push for partner. And so I flipped a coin. I'm just kidding. I didn't flip a coin. Yeah, right. It's like, hey, honey, you win. No, so I had just gone back from one of those conferences I used to go to. A guy who would become really close mentor of mine. He had this conference. His name is Dan Miller, and he wrote a book called 48 Days to the Work You Love, among other things. And so I flew down to his house for an event, May 30th of 2013. And it was a 2-day event, May 30th and June 1st. And I walked in, and it was about business coaching. And at the time I was like, maybe business coaching is something I'm going to switch into. So I get into the room, and it's in this like weird barn in Franklin, Tennessee, and he called it the Sanctuary. And I'm used to like cement and sky rises, and I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. Like, am I getting recruited for something? And
is it cold?
Yeah. And it turns out it was not in a negative way. Like, it just had that feeling. Like, it was definitely not a cult, but it was like, it became my world. And
Did they serve like a thing of juice, and you're like, no, hell no, not drinking that.
I brought my own, only bottled water. So I walked into the room, I sit down, he walks to the front of the room to start presenting, and I got my notes, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to take notes on how to be a coach. And all of a sudden this lady walks in and sits next to him, and I had never heard of her. I'd listened to his podcast there, and it turns out that was his wife. And for me, I'm thinking, what's his wife doing here? Not negative about her, but like,
right.
Like this isn't her event. Like, what's going on? To me, it was like work and family. And for him, like the two of them just like danced together. Like they would finish each other's, I always want to say sandwiches because of the dad joke. They would finish each other's sentences.
I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
We can sing Let It Go right now, and we can just take a tangent. Sorry.
Yeah, right. And it was just beautiful. And the way they treated each other, I'm thinking, man, my marriage is not like that. And so like, I'm sitting in that room, and I'm like, maybe this is why I'm supposed to be here. Like, not to learn how to be a coach, but to learn how to be a better husband. And so I can't remember a single thing I learned about coaching that day, but the way she looked at him, like, still chokes me up, because at the time I needed that. And I wasn't getting it because like there was just this tension. It was like, my wife would say, hey, my cousin's coming to town. Can you go to dinner 3 weeks from now? And my response would never be yes. It would be, well, I don't know what work's going to be like, but put me down as a maybe, essentially. And so like, even though I ended up now remember, the firm was the cream of the crop. Like, there was very little that I actually had to miss, but in my head, I made it this huge, this huge obstacle to even planning dinner with my wife 3 weeks later. And so I essentially disappointed her and reminded her how important she was to me compared to my job every single time, for the 1 in 100 times where I actually had to miss something that I planned that far in advance. And so I got on the plane to fly back And like the whole time I'm just like sketching out, and all I could think is like, man, like I'm doing like all the big things right. I'm providing, I'm faithful, I'm gentle, but I'm doing all of the little things wrong. And I mean all of the little things wrong. And so a week later, I still didn't say anything to my wife, but like on that flight, I said, I was not up for partner, but this was the year where it's like, hey, are you up for partner? Like, this is what it looks like to become partner in the law firm.
You're like,
so,
yeah, no. More work and management.
Well, and that's what it ended up being. So like I went into that, it was June 7th of 2013. I have this meeting, and I thought to myself, listen, if they say you're going to be partner, like there's no additional thing to do, then I'll take the title and then just quit 6 months later or transition. But if it's not like super easy, then I don't care about the title. And so I get in there and they said, hey man, we love you. You've been here 10 years. Partner, this is what partnership looks like. And it was essentially more work, less money, because you'd have to start paying self-employment tax and all that stuff. And my wife had no idea I was going to do this. And then I just quit on the spot. I said, well, what if I do none of that? And they're like, well, eventually you'll get fired. And they said it a little better than that. And
it's an up or out idea. Like you make partner, you make
you're either going for it and make it, or you don't go for it. And
we replace you somebody cheaper.
Yeah. And it was with great heart. Like, again, great people, great firm, but this is the law firm environment. This is how it worked. And so eventually, like I said, listen, you know me, I'm not going to be like I work hard. I'm not going to just not do any work. And so we agreed to transition me out over the next 8 months, where I didn't really have to do any work, but they would pay me through the following February. So like this is June 7th, which is pretty generous, because I said, listen, I'm just going to move the family home to Massachusetts. Nothing against you, but I just can't do this anymore. And so I went home and I told my wife, hey, just quit the job that she's been trying to get me to quit for 9 years. She didn't believe me. But before that happened, I started experimenting, because it was in the back of my mind, June 7th, I'm just going to quit if it's this. And so when I landed on June 1st, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to say anything, because if I say anything, then she's going to already have a house under contract in like 2 weeks. I need to have this meeting. So I just tried not to tell her I'm going to be a better husband, or to tell her I'm thinking of moving home, but just to be a better husband. And so I said, listen, all the little things this weekend, the rest of this weekend, and for the rest of this week, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and just do the little things. And so the following day, I'm sitting on the couch, and the dishwasher finished the dishes. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to empty the dishwasher while she's in the room. So I get up, I empty the dishwasher, I sit back on the couch and just watch TV. And my wife walks out of the room half hour later or so, whenever her show was over. I think she was watching TV, to empty the dishwasher, and she opens it up and it's empty. And the look on her face, it was not, wow, what a nice thing for Nick to do, empty the dishwasher. The look on the last thing on her mind was that Nick emptied the dishwasher. The look on her face was, oh my God, someone broke in our house and stole all of our dishes. Like legit, the last thing on her mind that was that I actually did that. Now it was, I can still remember
what happened in that barn.
Yeah. And so from that moment, I said, you know what, this is like, I just need to do this. Because in my mind, it was like, if she would just understand that work was busy, if she, like, I'm doing this for them, I'm doing this so she can stay home with the kids, I'm doing this for, and eventually I just said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I just did it and kept my mouth shut. And then June 7th, I quit. I went home, and she's like, what do you do for work? I said, I got one idea. I had called the only client I had in Massachusetts, and I knew how much they spent on lawyers, not just with my firm, but with others. And I called her up, and the general counsel, I said, her name's Janet. I said, Janet, I just quit my job. She didn't believe me, because I had told nobody. And I was Mr. Law Firm, like bringing in business, like lunches, dinners, sports games, like schmoozing, all that stuff. I said, I just quit my job. And she's like, yeah, right. I go, no, I quit. And I was like, I need you to hire me. And she's like, well, I can't hire you. This is like June 7th or whatever. I think it was the same day. And she's like, I can't hire you. She's like, I don't have a budget to hire you. I said, first of all, I know how much you spend on lawyers. I can save you 10 times that just by doing it myself. Second of all, you set your budget for this year, last year, but I know you didn't set your budget for next year yet. and I've already talked to my firm, and I'm going to get paid through the end of this year anyhow. So you don't have to pay me until next year. And then the only things I ask is I have a few sort of non-negotiables, but I realize I'm not negotiating from a position of strength, but you don't have to pay me till next year. And I don't care what you pay me. And she's like, yeah, right. Cause she knew I was on the committees that were like advocating to get more money for associates very successfully too. And she's like, yeah, right. I know you and money. And I said, yeah, but here's the thing. I trust you're going to pay me something fair. That's all I did to sort of protect my salary. I trust you're going to.
You're doing the risk reversal. Like if you're worried about that, you
exactly. Yeah. I was like,
pick too low, I'm going to argue. I didn't say that part, but pick.
Right.
Choose wisely.
Yeah. Like there was a number where I'm like, oh, I can't take care of the family for this. But I said, I trust you're going to pay me something fairly. But here's the thing. I just don't want email on my phone. I just can't stand to be at home and have that ding tell me I need to work. I don't want to work weekends. If there's an emergency, you know my work ethic. Just call my cell phone and I'll come in if it's an emergency, if it can't wait till Monday. And number three, there's four. Number three, I don't want to work night. I just want to set schedule. I want to be able to schedule dinner with my family. Again, you'll have my cell phone number. If there's an emergency, call me. It'll be fine. But I just want to be home when I'm home and at work when I'm work. I'll work my tail off. If you tell me 7 to 7 Monday through Friday, I'll be there 7 to 7 Monday through Friday. And I'm trying to build something on the side. I don't know what yet, but I've got to figure that out. And so I don't care if I have to tell clients I can meet with you at 10 p.m. as long as I can reliably show up for those meetings, because whatever I want to do, I don't want to be canceling because of work. I just want to be able to do it. And if there's an emergency, they'd understand. And then finally, I don't want to put this company on my LinkedIn. And it's still to this day not on my LinkedIn. And why? Because I don't want my online activities to be confused with this or associated with this company and my work with this company. And so that's all I care about. And you don't have to pay me till next year. I don't care what you pay me. Whatever you're going to do, you're going to hand me an offer letter and I'm going to sign it without negotiating. And she's like, give me some time. She came back to me. She said, okay, I got an offer you're not going to like. She put it to me. It was shockingly low. I took $125,000 a year pay cut and just signed it on the spot. And they ended up, when she saw the look on my face, she ended up throwing in a company car, which is great because when I left the company 2.5 years later, they gifted it to me and said, hey, you've been here for 2.5 years. You told us what you were going to do. You did what you said you were going to do. Nobody believed you that you weren't going to complain about money and that you were just going to come in, do your work, be a positive influence in the office, and then go home. But you said and did everything. We paid off the corporate lease and we want to help you with your business by giving you 3 months severance. So I quit that job too. And they gave me 3 months severance, 3 months full benefits, and an Audi Q5 on the way out the door.
What was the side hustle you started?
So I didn't know what it was. I went through a whole bunch of things. I went through freelance writing. I went through business coaching, and just none of it fit well. I went to blogging. And eventually I joined that mastermind group and I met this lawyer turned ghostwriter. And I was like, I've never heard of ghostwriting. I've heard of freelance writing where I'm trying to like pitch articles to places and stuff, but ghostwriting, tell me about that. And she explained it to me and she explained how it worked. And I asked, well, how much money can you make per book? She's like, well, I'm just kind of just getting started. And she threw out the number that she charged $20,000 per book. And I was like, how many books can you write at a time? She's like, well, I write 5 at a time, give or take. And I was like, okay. And how long does it take you to write a book? She said about 6 months. And I'm like, okay, so let me do some math. $200,000. Yeah. That can feed a family. You know, I live a simple life. So I like that. How do you become a ghostwriter? And she's like, well, I don't know, really. I just signed up for this list service. And they send, every time an author wants to have a book written, they send an email and we all pitch for it. And I was like, that I don't like, because I don't want to rely on a listserv still being in existence to get me my business. I'm not going to go on freelance websites. So that's the part I didn't like. So I said to myself, if I can just crack the code on how to be able to control and not rely on someone else for deal flow, then this could be it, because it's all the skills that I used as a lawyer. I write fast. I'm an empath. I'm goal oriented. Everything with my clients in the law firm was begin with the end in mind. We had this big litigation when someone was sued for $8 million. And he's like, listen, if I can just get 90 days, all the lawyers were talking about their strategies. And I was like, what do you want to achieve here? He's like, if I could just get 90 days to pay, I'm good. And so like, all right, can I take the first court date? They said, sure. I go down to the first court date.
One letter.
Like it was literally, I just go down to the court and the judge is like, hey, this seems like an open and shut case. And the judge is like, yeah, the opposing counsel is like, yeah, according to this statute and that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh God, Your Honor, it's not that simple. Because it turned out it wasn't that simple. I said, we're gonna be filing this motion, and it's just money damages. So if we have a slight delay and they win, they just get their money later. But if we lose, then my client's out $8 million that he shouldn't have to pay. And so if we could just there's a lot of information we have to gather and some research because it's a bit of a novel concept. If we could just get 90 days to file our motion, then there's no harm, no foul. But at least we have a chance at justice for our client. And the judge is like, that sounds reasonable. So I went home, literally the first conversation with those 90 days. My client loved me, took me out for steaks. It was amazing. And we ended up winning because he legitimately shouldn't have paid. Long story. He filed for bankruptcy protection in another country that doesn't automatically apply, but the debt was extinguished in the other country. And so we were able to update New York law to say there's this common law principle that can now apply, which is kind of cool. So, so I was just experimenting with everything. And this ghostwriting thing was like pretty cool. So I wanted to simplify the process. So this was sometime, I want to say in June of 2015. And I'm like, all right, ghostwriting, this feels right. And so I just started telling people, hey, I'm looking to get into ghostwriting. I'm looking to get into ghostwriting. And people would connect me with folks in the book industry. And because I started planning on this, I turned my story of being a terrible husband into the first book, a little baby memoir. It's somewhere up here. I think it's that one. It's called Confessions of a Terrible Husband, Lessons Learned from a Lumpy Couch. And it talks about me being dead at the scene of an accident, chasing all the money. It talks about my wife's, the look on her face when she thought all of our dishes got stolen. And then all the little things I was doing as sort of a self-reflection thing. I used that as a little baby portfolio. And it took me a while. But in December of 2015, I got my first ghostwriting client. And by August 1st, I walked into the office to start that conversation that would eventually lead to them with that severance package. Less than 8 months after I got my first ghostwriting client, I quit my job for good. And I've been ghostwriting full time and then buying, starting, or influencing other businesses to help thought leaders, experts, coaches, and other real heart-oriented, driven high achievers build a similar pathway to work in their passion in a profitable manner.
It's awesome. And you got some other stuff going. So like, there's so many lessons, and I don't want to interrupt you because it's just a great story. The biggest thing I think, I don't know if it's the biggest thing, but one thing I would love to pull out of that, and I think most entrepreneurs, I think you got to get your head around, is you need to control the deal flow. And that could be pay per click. That could be a strategy you do for blog writing, whatever else. But you have to find a way to get your own leads without being fully dependent on a service, we work with people with LinkedIn all the time. And I tell them, like, this is part of your strategy. This cannot be your only strategy. Like we can do the brand awareness piece. We can do this. We can get more conversations, but you need to have other avenues and referrals. But because you do need both that. You need a list, so to speak. You need other avenues, but you got to know all of it. And I think that's an important part. And it's the part that people spray and pray on a lot, and they waste a ton of money and they go broke trying. So I think for you identify, I need to control my own flow of deals to do that. And when you're doing ghostwriting, it's not like you can just go get lunches and do events. You got to find that writer in the time that has 20K ready to pay you. And for those out there who just pucker their buttholes a little bit when they heard 20K to write a book, that's a very fair price for a ghostwriter. If you go to I think it's .com, and they charge you like $35 for the full thing. And if you go less than that, you're going to get a mixed quality.
Yeah, and for context, my current rate is $75, and I've written over 100 books. I've had more, I don't say this to brag, but this is my goal, is I've spent a total of $22.15 advertising for my any type of real marketing for my ghostwriting business. And that was as a joke to send donuts to a radio station to see if they'd mention my name on air, and they did twice. And I have more clients who have hired me for multiple projects than just one project. And that's because I have a one sentence business plan. And that's if I help enough people become successful, I never have to worry about my own success. I use what I call how did you do it marketing. And so when you're really successful and you're so excited about your book, people say, man, how'd you do it? And you say, talk to Nick.
Yep. And listen, as somebody who's gone through a ghostwriter, if you're thinking about writing your own book, I'll throw a little turd on the table for everyone on this one. I know personally, I'm a creative. I can write pretty well in some things, and I'm a good storyteller, typically audio-wise.
Yeah.
When you put pen to paper to go put that into a 75,000 word book, I will tell you, unless not only will you need full headspace into it, if you don't have the talent, you won't get it done. And you'll do what most writers do, which is 95% of his procrastination, because you just don't know what you're doing. You're a fear of sucking, and you don't think you'll be successful and you'll be judged. And you're right. People, if you publish it, will go, that was terrible. And even if you do it well, which mine's about to come out, I'm like, people are going to think this is so bad and dumb. But the truth is, it's just a story and it's a shot at it and you throw it out there. But you definitely don't want to half-ass it and suck at it intentionally or AI it.
Well, so AI from a writing perspective is a challenge, of course, and there's some dangers, especially because the Copyright Office has been consistently saying you don't own your book if you create it through AI, because AI is the creator, not you. You're just instructing the creator. But the number one mistake that any author makes, and so I since built a relationship with a really good publisher, Morgan James Publishing, that's published some pretty successful books. Brendan Burchard's Millionaire Messenger. We did the first editions of Russell Brunson's Expert Secrets and .com Secrets, Jeff Walker's Launch, some Ray Edwards copywriting books, guerrilla marketing books, like a whole bunch of really successful books, bookstore distribution, all that stuff. And eventually I ended up investing in the company, and now I'm the CEO there. We still have a great team that's operating in it, really core key team members to help it work well on a day-to-day basis. But the number one mistake authors make is not that they don't write a good book, it's that they write the wrong book. And if you write the wrong book, the worst thing that can happen is for it to be a runaway success, because you're going to have the wrong people calling you. They're going to call you for the wrong reasons. You're going to hate your book. You're going to hate your life. You're going to hate your publisher. You're going to hate your ghostwriter. You're going to hate yourself. And I wouldn't want that for anybody. And so if any value, even beyond the words and the art and science of writing to get people to change and to inspire people, that's what I tell my clients. And that's really all I charge for. I charge for the strategy and the process that I use. The words I just throw in for free. If someone's like, oh, how much is it for a 40,000 word book? Same thing. How about 75? Same thing. We write the words we need to write to be able to achieve the goal. And so I don't charge for the words. But then the second most expensive and biggest mistake authors make, even if they write the right book, is they hide in a corner for 6 months or 6 years, or hire a ghostwriter who hides in the corner for 6 months or 6 years with them. And they release the book to the world. And once they run out of cousins, they run out of sales. And so the best approach to take in that regard is to write your book using a process where you don't even care if you ever sell a book. You'll give it away as fast as you can, because you know for every 100 books that's out there, someone's going to hire you for $10,000. And so what I do with people, and recommend anyone watching here does, is I have them start talking about their book and networking using their book from the second they commit to writing it. So, hey, I'm writing this book. I had one client, financial advisor. He ended up having to pause the project during COVID because he just needed to focus on things. And we haven't even started it up yet. We only wrote the first draft of his book. And he, before we were done with the first draft, was earning $620,000 per year more because of his book. And
you're spot on, right? So Never Been Promoted was because last summer I did my first initial draft, and I was like, oh, we should be close. And here we are over a year later, still working through it, because I'm like, I had to do a rewrite. It wasn't what I wanted. And the truth is that's what spawned this podcast, this YouTube channel. And it was going to be called Never Been Promoted. And even just this month here in September, right? I've decided literally this week, I was like, I'm actually going to, because my ghostwriter's I was like, hey, I think the whole through line is cutting the tide, all the stuff that's holding you back. And it's not like I think we should call it cut the tie. And his only response is like, that'd be more about them. Never been promoted. It's about you. And I was like, that's a really good point. and so I was like, though the story has lots of my stories in it, cutting the tie is what I want you to do. So from it ties into what the community is that I wanted to build, right? Which is cut the tie. And those two things now can work together. Like, hey, the book is about cutting the tie, and the community is to help you do that, and whatever means to you to get the things that are holding you back. And that allows me to keep Never Been Promoted now as a brand separate around podcast, YouTube channel. It just has a funny name. But you're right. If you don't have the ideas of where you wanted to go, that would have produced the wrong group for me. It would have been people like looking to get jobs as opposed to people looking to get help moving forward in their entrepreneurship. And you're spot on with that. And that was actually the realization literally this week I made. I was like, oh my God, I need to. And I've got podcasts out there saying, hey, I'm the author of Never Been Promoted. I'm like, well, that's going to change.
Well, now I just think it's a clunky way to reference host.
Well, the logo, we're going to have some shared logoing is what's going to happen because it's the personal branding, but I'll figure that out later. Talk about like some stuff you're doing with like, podcasting, Podfest stuff as well, just because, just conscious of time, just want to make sure that people kind of realize how important podcasts are and your involvement with this Podfest and stuff. Because I mean, I'm saying that because I find that what you guys are doing down there to be really cool and important, because I don't think people realize the power of podcasting still.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in 2022, I invested formally in Morgan James Publishing and realized basically just from listening to the thought leaders and the experts and the passion, the people with messages that I was helping write books, I'd listen to the questions that asked, now what do I do with this thing? Or how do I promote this thing? Or how do I get on stages or shows? How do I make money with digital marketing funnels? So my focus was to, all right, how do I start with connections, then start with influence, then eventually get to control all the things, these people who are stuck in jobs that some of them hate, some of them just, it's not their passion, not their calling. How do I help them not need day jobs? And so I worked my way from referring to the publisher to influencing the publisher to, being a part of the leadership team of the publisher. And then the other pieces started getting together. And I had been friends with Chris Kremitzos for several years at Podfest, which is sort of a grassroots, bootstrapped conference, the oldest and consistently running in-person podcasting originally conference in the world. And we expect about 3,000 or so people to register this year and attend, and some really, really cool sponsors who have already signed up to support the show, which is incredible. And so he and I have been friends. And last September of 2023, he called me up and said, hey, I think I've taken Podfest as far as I can take it. I'm a people person. I'm not a numbers person. I'm not a spreadsheet guy. I saw what you did with Morgan James because I did some really cool things with the team at Morgan James. And so definitely don't take the credit. Same thing with I've written 7 or 8 Wall Street Journal bestsellers, USA Today bestsellers, international bestsellers. I've had the #1 book on Amazon multiple times, like literally the #1, not a subcategory, #1 book on Barnes and Noble multiple times. And like people are like, man, you must have a great system. And the truth is I do. But I also work with people who are successful to begin with. And like, I just help them focus their success efforts with what I know about how books and people work. And so I can't take all the credit. And the same thing with the companies. Like we have an amazing team at Morgan James. And so Chris is like, I think I've taken Podfest as far as I can take it. I need some help. I saw what's been going on at Morgan James. Can you do the same with Podfest? And I said, I'm interested, but I'm not interested in doing it if you're not going to be involved. And he's like, I would love to work with you. I said, all right, let's walk before we run. Let me help out this year, and don't pay me a penny.
Wait, I've heard this bit before. Don't pay me for 6 months.
Exactly.
How to guarantee a job?
Yeah, just have someone else paying you. Fortunately, I have a really strong reputation in the ghostwriting world, which is cool. Like I love people not knowing who I am. So I resent you for putting me on your awesome show.
You know what, though? Resent away, because I like to trade up all day long. You're my paperclip, man. You're beyond the paperclip. You're like a full. Yeah. You want to get to that Lamborghini.
There you go. Work my way up. So I said, let's just work together. Let me see. Because I think the authors at Morgan James and some of the people in my community, because I also launched a course on how to help writers put my ghostwriting agency out of business called Ghostwriter School. And I've helped a lot of people like get into ghostwriting, sort of fast track into ghostwriting so they didn't have to learn the really expensive lessons I learned trying to figure this thing out from a marketing and business perspective, especially. And so I said, I think my community would really love to connect with authors, with podcasts, because they're always talking about, how do I get on podcasts? How do I network with podcasters? How do I start a podcast? All these things. So I said, let me try. And so I did an author room. I said, let me just take an author room for a day and see if I can attract enough people into that room to see if there's a really good fit. And then I'll help out with some other things. And it ended up being the most successful Podfest in at least since COVID, if not ever. And the author room was packed. People were bringing in chairs, moving around tables, because we like put in tables there just because I wasn't sure. I was like, all right, let's fill up the room with tables, because if we fill it up with chairs, people might not show up and it'll be awkward. But if there are tables in there, then there's fewer chairs and it'll look packed. And it turns out that was a mistake. That people, or maybe it wasn't, because people came out to me at the end and said, this needs to be 3 days and you need a bigger room. And so I said, this might be it. And so Chris and I worked out a deal where I'm the managing partner, I'm the CEO. He's still a shareholder and in charge of market. He's not going anywhere. He's in literally Bogota, Colombia right now, doing Podfest Colombia. There we expanded into Asia in May, and September right now as we speak is our first of what we intend to be annual events that we're going to grow in Colombia. And we're working with a promoter in Africa now to do something there and really take it worldwide. And what we do is we have a community of podcasters, and we focus on independent podcasters. We love the industry, and we love all of the great services there. Our sponsors allow us to do what we do, but we know the heartbeat of what we do is that community, that feel, and we help enough creators become successful. Everyone wins, because there'll be 3, 4, 5,000 creators there to all learn about the great products and services that can help them grow. And so what we really focused in on that community there.
I love that. And, and I'm looking forward to this year, because I'm going to hopefully be a little more active of a participant. I'm not one who typically goes to a conference as a consumer. I usually go there to try to add value, or I don't go. It's always been my philosophy of it, because it's time, right? And it's just, you can't touch enough people. So we'll take that one offline, because I think the model we've never been promoted is an interesting business model that is, I think a lot of podcasters could benefit if they have the ability to do one thing, which is add value first. And if you can add value first, you can monetize a podcast, you can grow a great YouTube channel, and you can all do it in a year. And that's what we did. So and by the way, back up about 9 months, speaking to some of the people at Podfest and some other pieces, that's how this relationship got started between you and I. Is I was telling them what I was doing, and they said, well, you should come down and present at Podfest. I had like a week. I was like, you know what? I want to wait a year, because it's already working, but the presentation I could give next year will be ridiculous. And they're like, we love that. I'm like, perfect. So I agree with you. It's a really cool event.
Anything that can add value to the attendees. We want attendees to be able to leave and say, these 5 connections I make are going to change my life. Maybe not tomorrow, but here. And this information that is going to help.
It's so I'll leave you guys with this note, and just because conscious of time here, just on the show, but like the sales team from Podfest specifically was like, hey, what do you want to sell? And I said, nothing. I said, I actually want to go present how you can go make money on your podcast. I go, I don't have anything to sell. I go, Never Been Promoted is out there to help people get better at entrepreneurship, period. And if I can help the podcasters do that, I just want to present that to them. And the only QR code I'll put up is just, listen to the podcast or something. Like, I don't know, like anyway. And so enough of that. So I want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you. Give me like the 30-second shameless plug. How do you want people to get a hold of you, and who should do that?
Yeah. If you just want to, I'm an email guy, nick@authorityghostwriting.com. Shoot me an email. Like, I don't have a lead magnet to get you on a list or anything like that. We'd love to see you at Podfest if you go to podfestexpo.com, but nick@authorityghostwriting.com, that'll get to me. And I'd love to connect and see how we can help people succeed.
I was not fast enough to type that on the screen. The Nick at I have go. It's like I am like, I should have a shirt. My team says I should have a shirt that says my tie-ups are legendary.
Love that.
I should, because people who have fat thumbs will know what I'm talking about right there. Nick, you rock. Thank you so much for I know you're super busy and like and the fact that you've come on the show, and I cannot tell you how much I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I didn't realize all the little things that wow. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Happy.
I'm going to put you in the periwinkle room here. There's no snacks because it's digital, and I probably would have eaten them if they were, but I'll be right back with you. Thank you, Nick, so much for joining today. And anybody who made it to this point in the show, listening or watching, you rock. Get out there, go unleash your entrepreneur, cut the tie to whatever the hell's holding you back. So you can literally just be your best self. Beyond entrepreneurship, cut the ties to all that shit that you don't need to worry about or shouldn't have to deal with. And the fears, the excuses. I always talk about the people in your life. The truth is it's you. Cut the things, the beliefs that that might not be true, the things that you hold on to that are just excuses. Get rid of it. It's not worth it. Thank you for listening. Get out there, unleash your entrepreneur.